Mango Thunder Slice, and today we're going to be going over my recently completed AR-15 build. This is my setup of parts before it was assembled. All of the basic parts minus, the bells and whistles going on top like the optics. Yeah, just a little commentary about what the compliance situation is to have an AR-15 in California in 2019, and the two different options that a person can go to build an AR-15 that does not have to be registered with the state as an assault weapon per the laws that the California government has established. And so yeah, basically we'll just be going through it, and yeah, so here we go. You see the lower receiver, I unfortunately ordered it just raw aluminum without the anodizing, the coating. I should have done that. I tried to take it into a shop here in the Sacramento area, and I think the owner was a liberal, and he looked at me like I was a domestic terrorist when I told him I wanted to anodize an 80% lower. And it basically, anyway, just yeah, get the 80% lower anodized when you order it. And that's the 80% lower when you order it. It's a raw block. And this part right here is, solid aluminum. This is the 20% that gets drilled out by the router jig to complete the lower receiver, and that is what is considered finishing and creating the firearm. So, you can buy the 80% lower. You can't buy a finished one, 100% milled out, unless you have a federal firearms license. So by buying an 80% lower and milling it out yourself, you can build one at home without having any sort of special federal license. And here's mine, blocked out my name and town, just maintaining the illusion of anonymity. Mango Thunder is the model number, and the caliber. I could have put regular NATO round 5.56, but theoretically I could change the lower receiver to fire a different round in the future. So I just left it as a caliber multi, and of course the Gadsden flag snake. Just for good measure. And this is basically some slides from 5D Tactical, the maker of the router jig, and this is essentially how you mill out the last 20%. This thing connects perfectly. It locks into the 80% lower, and with a standard router, that you can get at Home Depot, it attaches to this frame, as you can see here in the shot, and it moves in a sort of pattern, and you basically just drill out layer after layer. It's only a few millimeters at a time, and it moves in the grooves of those sockets, and it gives you the perfect pattern that you're looking for. Now luckily, I have a friend up here where we live who already had the main set for an AR-10, and so I just had to buy the AR-15 conversion kit, and so then I was able to use that and mill out that last 20% according to the AR-15 configuration, which is different because it's just a different size bullet, different trigger assembly and whatnot on the inside. And there you can see the router hooking up to the frame, grooving along. And basically, yeah, it produces a lot of aluminum shavings. As you can see, you can kind of hook up a shop vac, as you can see in that frame, then it kind of just pulls all the aluminum shavings away from the operating station. It's a pretty cool thing, and it's an investment, but it's at that point you can create as many finish as many lower receivers as you want, assuming that you just go easy on the drill bits and don't, snap them, which can happen if you go too hard on them. And there you see it's pretty nice, and it works really well. And then you release it. It's got its holes drilled in the side and all milled out for the trigger, the fire control group. And here we are, and it's just layer and layer and layer, and you just carve out, exactly the pattern that you're looking for. Those grooves off to the right are essentially have notches in them by which it gives you exact indication of which layer, how far to extend the bit, each time, so you don't overdo it and break it. And here we have the aluminum shavings. You know, we'll be using those in some orgonite pieces. Not your average channel around here. Somebody who, you know, makes orgonite and also builds firearms. But, you know, that's Mango Thunderslice. And so in this frame, the grip is not actually secured on there. It's just stuck on there. This is the assembly for the magazine release button. And there you can see the magazine release button installed. Again, the engraving, which is required by California law at this point in 2019. This is the trigger guard assembly. This is all really easy stuff. You know, just follow the instructions online. Nothing too hard about this. You know, bought a few extra tools, but nothing too complicated. Another part of the lower parts group going into the lower receiver, which releases the bolt carrier group and loads the cartridge. I forget what that piece is called. Here we have the fire control group, aka the trigger, and one of the springs that is attached to another metal part that sort of interfaces with that. And there you see the trigger installed, and it has its basic action. There's the hammer. Again, maintaining the illusion of anonymity. Here's the hammer. It gets pulled back and locked into position, and then pull the trigger and it releases the hammer as intended. And there you can see with the fire and safety switch installed, and now you can see that when the safety is activated and it's in that position, the trigger does not activate the action and the hammer doesn't move. Switch it to fire and it releases. So functional. This is when we start with the buffer tube kit and the buffer tube assembly. And the buffer tube, essentially this tube, there's a spring that goes into it, and that manages the recoil after each shot fired, and you know, the bolt carrier group slides back and a new round goes in, and this spring manages that recoil. And there you saw the spring, it goes into that tube. And here we have a fixed stock per the featureless build, which we'll go over in summary at the end. Here's the parts set up now with the lower receiver fully assembled, and now moving on to the upper receiver assembly. Video overlay of all the parts. Barrel, gas tube, gas block, handguard, muzzle suppressor, delta ring assembly. And now we are looking at the upper receiver assembly. I bought it pre-assembled. Some people, you can assemble it yourself and put the cartridge ejection port and that door on there. But here we're entering the barrel. There's a notch on the top of it that fits into a slot on the upper receiver so it does not turn. It's locked in place. And the delta ring assembly and barrel nut, which slides over the barrel and locks into place. This gave me some trouble. There's three aspects to this that need to be aligned. There's the actual delta ring, there's this gear looking thing, which is the actual barrel nut, and then there's a spring sort of thing, a spring washer in the middle, and each one of those has a notch through which the gas tube goes through, as you see. This is when we get to the gas tube and gas block assembly. Went and set up a bench vise, which I did not have before, and so basically this was the hardest part of the build for me, was in getting this little tiny roll pin into this tiny hole in the gas block, or at least starting it. And then once it's started, you know, you put in the gas tube and it's got a corresponding hole, and the pin is hammered through, and then it is fixed into place, the gas block to the gas tube. And for those who don't know, you know, I didn't quite know all this before I started my build, but when they say an AR-15 is gas powered, you know, it's the gas pressure created by the firing of the shot, right? When you fire the shot, it creates pressure in the barrel, and there's that tiny hole in the barrel, and that sends air pressure through the gas tube back into the upper receiver, which ejects the cartridge and slides the bolt carrier group back. Right, it's self-activating for that, you know, semi-automatic function because of the air pressure generated by the shot, which I thought was really fascinating. But yeah, trying to get this pin punch perfectly aligned to just get this started, put some tape over it just so I wasn't marring it. There you see the gas port where the air comes out of from the barrel and through that tube and back in to the upper receiver. And once I got it started, then, you know, it still took some work to get it hammered through, but starting it was the real challenge. This wasn't too hard. Took some force, but it wasn't that hard. There are more elegant ways of protecting the surface from marring, but I found, you know, just some tape put on it worked pretty well at protecting the surface reasonably well. And yes, that is Beatrix Galactica, our adventure van, in the background. For those who have been around the channel for a long, long time, that's the van that Space Panther and I lived out of after we got married for about 7 months before we moved to Long Beach. And here we see, yes, the full assembly. There you see the alignment of those 3 notches that I was mentioning. So we have the gear, which is the barrel nut. We have the outer circle, which is the delta ring. And then in the middle is a spring washer. And each one of those has this circle that has to be properly aligned in order for the gas tube to go through and into the upper receiver. And, you know, again, this is what locks the barrel right here at the connection of the barrel to the upper receiver. And there you see the full assembly. And close up on the delta ring once installed. This was a little trick just to make sure that the gas port on the barrel and the gas port in the actual gas block were aligned, just making a little pencil mark along the center dividing line so that when you slide that gas tube and gas block onto the barrel, you can be sure that they are properly aligned and you're getting that optimum transfer of that air pressure in order to, you know, cycle the action of the rifle and make sure that it's functioning properly. And there you can see the gas tube sliding through those 3 holes aligned in the delta ring and gas tube assembly, and there it is all together. These, I don't know what they're technically called, they hold the gas block in place. Just use an Allen wrench, small Allen wrench, and twist them into place. And there is a proper spacing of the gas block from that sort of notch in the barrel, and there's, you know, proper spacers for those who are professionals about this, but otherwise you can use 2 business cards. There's a Mango and Space Panther business card, and you slide it in between that notch and the gas block, and that puts it in the proper place versus just sliding it all the way up to against that notch. That's just how it's manufactured. It was the advice from the guys who make DARs, and I'll put links down below for the instructions that I followed for this, so you have those same resources. Of course, they're all over the internet. I'm sure you guys know how to use Google, but, you know, this was a really fun project. It's like Legos for adult, you know, grown men. It's not that hard. It does take focus. It does take, you know, thought and preparation and kind of strategic acquisition of parts, especially when you're in California and you're trying not to be a felon and carry an assault weapon. Right, but it's a really fun project, and, you know, it's very rewarding not just to buy something but to build something. And there's a video, close-up video of basically screwing in those little things that hold the gas block to the barrel. And you know, I'm not a major firearms expert. I am a firearms enthusiast, major, you know, supporter of the Second Amendment, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. You know, I made a video earlier in 2018 just saying, you know what, I think it's time to buy an AR-15 because the communists really don't want me to have it, so it must be pretty great. Here we have the Magpul carbine length handguard. You split it in 2. And you take the top half and you pull back the delta ring, and again that spring washer gives a lot of resistance, and you have to pull it back in order to expose that barrel nut, which there's a notch on the inside of the handguard that slides onto that. So you pull back the delta ring, and then when you let it slide back into place, it locks the handguard in place, which is gripped around that barrel nut in a notch on the inside. And it takes, you know, a little bit of finagling, and you know, put some elbow grease into it, and then, yeah, it locks into place. And with this handguard, I think ideally it should have an A2 iron sight on the front, I may just use it free floating and just have a scope on the top, because the free floating handguard isn't stable enough as it is like that to hold any sort of scope on the front. And there we have the muzzle suppressor. This actually, there's something I forgot in this frame. There should be a washer in between the muzzle suppressor and the actual barrel that goes on first. And it's called a crush washer. You'll see it here in the next frame. It is, designed to make sure that they're, fully secure and sealed, but also it is what it's called a crush washer. And you want the muzzle suppressor and these big holes right here, you want these to be on the left and right side. You don't want them to be up and down, because that's going to make the rifle kick back and its effect recoil. So basically, but if you just tighten this on by hand with the crush washer or without it, you'll find that they're naturally facing up and down. So you put on the crush washer, and then you use, I put it back in the vise, and I use pliers and to just turn it that extra distance, and it actually crushes that washer a little bit. But with just some extra leverage and force, you can put those large ports to the left and right, so you're properly managing the gas from the shot and the recoil. And here you see basically almost done here. We have the most of the upper receiver assembly, the full lower receiver assembly. We have our bolt carrier group and our charging handle. And this is what performs the function of the rifle, right? So the magazine loads the cartridge up, but it's the bolt carrier group that's sliding back and forth inside the upper receiver that is loading each cartridge. And also when the hammer strikes, it strikes the bolt, which then activates the cartridge and fires the shot. So, this is a very important part of the weapon, and now we're essentially going to be sliding this into the upper receiver, and as well as the charging handle, which like cocks the weapon and loads the cartridge into place for the initial shot. Another shot. Here we can kind of see the inside. This was something that, at least in the instructions I was going off of, they didn't quite explicitly mention. Maybe they just assumed everybody knew it, but I kind of just had to play around with it until I realized how this worked. The charging handle has two little notches on it, and it doesn't just slide straight in. You've got to kind of like hook it in, and those notches match up with a corresponding notch on the inside, which you can kind of see in that shot right there. So you slide it in, in the middle, in the main opening of the upper receiver, and then slide it into the top through that notch, and then it'll slide all the way in and get it where you want it to be, want it to go. Full assembly, charging handle, showing the notches again that we were just talking about. And, flip it upside down. It's a little easier, so you can see what you're looking at. And I tried to get a good shot here. You can't really see too much, but essentially I'm showing those notches sliding into place. And then after a little bit of finagling, it goes in. Just there it is, and then it slides all the way in. Here we have the bolt carrier group, right? And so this little key right up here, this actually is what's going to slide into the front and connect to the gas tube. So again, we were talking about how the gas cycles the cartridge and ejects the spent cartridge and loads the next one. By this sliding back and forth, this is where the gas comes in and slides this whole action in the rifle. And inside of there is the bolt. It's just like it sounds, it's a piece of metal, and that's kind of what's actually being primed and fired when the cartridge ignites and the shot is fired. And it slides right into place. There's the bolt can be in two positions, an inner and an outer position. You want to be sure that it's in the outer position. Otherwise it just simply won't go into the upper receiver. And then it is in place, and just to show you what happens when you push it in, pop, it pops out the ejection port cover. And there's a little handle, little function on the charging handle that you pull, and it allows it to be pulled back. And this is essentially showing what is happening inside of the rifle as the shot is fired. And when you pull the charging handle, it pulls that bolt carrier group back, allowing a new cartridge or a new round to be loaded in from the magazine, which of course is pressed by the spring. And yeah, be careful there, it'll go popped out and flying. You know, when the rifle is of course assembled, it's buffered by the buffer tube, but you know, you pull it out with enough vigor and it'll go flying across the room, as you just saw. And yeah, now it's basically locked and loaded into place, and we essentially have a fully assembled upper receiver assembly and a full lower receiver assembly, and we're just connecting them, boom, right there. And with just 2 more steps, we have a full rifle, which is just basically to secure these 2 pins, which you're seeing right now. And they can be pushed in by hand. Unfortunately, just pushing from a poor position in here, but if you can't press it, just hit it with your palm and it goes in. And then there's the front one, bam, and it's secure. We now have a fully assembled California compliant featureless AR-15 rifle, dubbed model name Mango Thunder. Hoorah! And the maximum California 10-round magazine, locked and loaded. I apologize for my poor firearm etiquette. I just assembled this from components. I do not even own any 5.56 rounds yet, and I know that there is no potential for this weapon to cause harm at this point. I'm just kind of having fun because I just built a really awesome, fun weapon tool and, you know, dare I say even sporting toy. I don't hunt. I'm not going to hunt, you know. It is nice to think that I could, but mainly I am about shooting targets. I am just a firearms enthusiast, you know. I do eat meat sometimes, but I eat mostly vegan diet, but I sure do love the Second Amendment, and I love the culture of firearms, to tell the truth. I love a culture of preparedness and strength, and just being aware of all potentialities and being ready to respond to any situation, which is why I applied for my carry concealed weapon permit here in El Dorado County in California. That was back in August. They are approving them because the sheriff is very friendly with the Second Amendment and supportive of citizens having their exercising their rights and carrying a firearm. It's just that they're understaffed and it's a huge backlog of applications. So, you know, it's been 6 months now, and they're saying, you know, on average it's between 6 and 9 months wait. So we'll see, hopefully here pretty soon. And yeah, the full assembly all together. And in a moment you'll see, going back to our full parts blow up, you can again see what we bought as far as components, and then seeing them all come together. Again, it's a really fun project. It's very rewarding to make your own rifle, to make your own AR-15, and to have, you know, not just like, you know, a toy, but actually a very functional survival, you know, home defense weapon. And I'll be putting a sling on there. It's a Magpul MS3 sling. It can kind of switch between, you know, front and back. It clips onto the fixed stock just like that. This is the scope that I'm looking at, the Crossfire 2 rifle scope made by Vortex. You know, it's not too expensive. You know, people get really fancy with their scopes. There's scopes like thousands of dollars, you know, just like telescopes or binoculars. You know, it's just that same science and technology that gets all crazy. But this one, you know, not too much, and it got really good reviews from what I saw. It's an adjustable magnification between 2 and 7x. And, you know, so I figured this was a pretty good, you know, option for an optic for both short range and for long range target shooting. And just more visuals of that scope and, you know, the dials to calibrate, you know, what you're shooting at. So now basically just going over the featureless rifle. This is really the only way to build a legal AR-15 rifle in California and still be able to detach the magazine with the normal just magazine release button. Is you have to get rid of all the evil features, which is, you know, a number of different things listed here: a pistol grip, a thumb hole stock, a telescoping or folding stock, a flash hider, a grenade or flare launcher, or a forward pistol grip. If any of these things is on your AR-15 rifle, you are expected to have a fixed magazine, meaning it can't be released without, some form of complex, taking a part of the weapon, or you basically have to go this route. You have to take them off, or otherwise, that's right, you have to register it as an assault weapon. You have to, be on that government list saying, this is my weapon, it's an assault weapon, right? Which, of course, is an arbitrary term. As you can see, none of these things, except for the grenade launcher, really have much to do with assault at all. They're just about, features, right? And they don't like the idea of weapons being so compact, I guess, and so easy to hide, which I guess is a fair, concern. But again, are you really gonna protect people by preventing law-abiding citizens from buying these things? I don't really know. I mean, personally, I feel more secure when I know people, when I see somebody open and carrying, like the typical kind of anxiety liberal will kind of, be wary of such a person. I feel more secure when I see people carrying. I know that basically, all right, this person is exercising their right to self-defense, of the right to bear arms, and if anything by chance happens, which of course it probably won't, but that's the beauty of being a man, as you prepare for things, even if they're not going to happen. The more, that you prepare, the less that things happen and they phase you at all. It's just how it goes. And lawfully owned standard capacity magazines, if you bought a regular standard capacity, which is 30 rounds, before the year 2000, you can still own them and use them on a featureless rifle, but that's the only way you can use them. Otherwise, they were banned in 2000, and you can't even get them anymore. In California, it's 10-round magazine capacity maximum. And there's Arnold with the grenade launcher, right? No grenade launchers. There's some workarounds with the pistol grip thing. This is one innovative one. Here's, what I consider to be a fairly hideous option that I was just unwilling to go with. It's basically a pistol grip with this fin on the back that makes it so you can't put your thumb around to the left side. This is the one that I went with, Strike Industries featureless grip. It looked like the most comfortable of all the options that were not. Obviously, a pistol grip is going to be, the most comfortable, but I find that this one is pretty comfy. The only thing is that it doesn't quite let me hit the safety switch with my thumb. It's just blocked between my thumb, with that grip and the stock. So what I'm going to get is ambidextrous safety, so that I can flip the safety on the right side of the rifle, and so I can still flip the safety with my right hand without having to come over and use my left hand to flip it, which I consider to be very inconvenient in, say, a home defense situation. And here we have a flow chart of essentially the California compliance for those who are really interested in this thing. This is basically a diagram of how the law is set up in California. If it looks confusing, that's because it is. But essentially, to sum it up, there's two real ways to get from start right here to the green box over here, which is legal and not classified as an assault weapon. Right, and to summarize, essentially, one is if it has any of the evil features, including just a pistol grip. It can have the exact same as the rifle I built, but it has a pistol grip. All right, now basically it's an evil feature, so you have to have a fixed magazine. And there are some proprietary solutions out there, the Patriot pin and maglock combo, which we'll show in just a second. And that's way to have technically a fixed magazine that is released. The weapon is taken apart when you reload it. That's one option, but again, you're still only 10 rounds. And the other is the featureless, which is what I did. It's just getting rid of the pistol grip, getting rid of all those other features, and you can have your regular detachable magazine function, so quick reloading as normal. So, and here's just kind of a summary, the ability to not have a bullet button, to just use your magazine release as it was intended. For me, this was very important. For just a basic functional rifle, I don't want to have a fixed magazine, especially with only 10 rounds. I know I should be able to hit my target with 10 rounds, but, and the solution of the maglock does look pretty slick, but I wanted to have it compliant and not have to register it as an assault weapon. It's not something that I want to do. And the AR pistols, right, there's even more rules about that. You can still build them 80% build. That's essentially what I did. You can still buy a 80% lower, but now you are required to get a serial number from the California Department of Justice, any lower receivers bought this year. Otherwise, if you bought it prior to July 1st, 2018, you don't need to notify the government. You can choose your own serial number. It does still have to be engraved, and that's what I did. I've been planning to do this for a long time. As you guys who have been around for a while know, I mentioned this back in, I think, April, like a full year ago. I'm gonna build an AR-15, and so I bought the lower receiver. And now basically I've completed it. So I just did a custom serial number, but people buying new ones today, they're going to have to apply to the California Department of Justice for a serial number from the state. And here you see the maglock and Patriot pin combo. You press this release and it opens up the rifle, and then the magazine releases. And then you're able to reload the new magazine, and it's locked and loaded. And so you see it's a pretty good option, and that will allow you to have a regular pistol grip. So when I build a new I'll probably build another one with the features and the maglock Patriot pin combo, and have this one as my function rifle with the standard reload, and then have the fancy features one where I go full out, everything except for the grenade launcher, and then put, basically just the maglock and Patriot pins, so it, gets around that fixed magazine rule. Here's old Dianne Feinstein exercising absolutely atrocious firearm etiquette with her finger on the trigger with a rifle pointed in the direction of a bunch of people in the crowd. Just goes to show that liberals have the least, actual real world sense of firearms of any people. And, they project their own anxieties onto others because they don't have self-control, and they are actually, justifying their own immorality by saying, oh, people can't control themselves and we need to just take away the tools of destruction and that'll solve the problem. But it's a fallacy. And this just kind of closing up with the state of Jefferson, of California, and the communist enclaves of San Francisco and the Bay Area and LA keep pressing forward with these hyper leftist socialist policies, mandatory vaccination, with no medical exemption at all. I mean, pressing forward with gun control, taking away people's right to the Second Amendment. I mean, Silicon Valley is controlling speech. They're taking away the right to the First Amendment. I mean, these are by default, public kind of utilities at this point. They are the public forum. The president communicates with the citizens through Twitter, right? If they start, curating content, they are now publishers. They are now basically in a whole new regulatory environment if they actually start doing that, which, of course, as we all know, they already are. And, as far as California goes, outside of the, industrial, not even industrial, basically outside of the urban centers, most of California is still red. It's just we don't have as many people. And there's a, strong movement building to create a 51st state, and for essentially Northern California and a part of Oregon, basically, at least for California, it's these counties seceding from the state and creating, the state of Jefferson, the 51st state of the United States of America. And we're in El Dorado County, so we would be one of them. And here's kind of more of just a geologic map. I mean, we would be bigger than most of the states in the country. This is an incredibly resource-rich region, not just in legal firearms and cannabis, but just freedom-minded people and, just really good people. I love the people in the Pacific Northwest. This is one of my favorite places in the entire world. I would love for the state of Jefferson to happen. to have all the best parts of California's geography with actual freedom, like, you know, it kind of used to be, I guess, you know, before I was ever born. And here you see kind of a breakdown of the Oregon component and what the geographic boundaries of this state might look like in the future, at least based on the support that we see, you know, people declaring. I mean, I see this sticker on so many pickup trucks and on so many signs throughout all of our town and throughout all of El Dorado County. It is very popular and it is building steam. And, you know, again, it's a perfect just iteration, just like the Catalonians, right, of people expressing their sovereignty. And not everybody's ready for freedom in this world. We can't, you know, have the anarchist and communist delusion of, oh, everybody's ready to be free, so let's just destroy all of the authority structures and, you know, just see what happens, right? I do believe in legitimate authority. I believe in home rule, like the American system was originally founded, that the people get to decide their own rules and the way that they live. And, you know, it's in that action of controlling our county elected officials, knowing who the sheriff is, allowing ourselves to, you know, carry firearms and own our property and defend our life and that of our family. I mean, and build wealth without excessive taxation, all that's, you know, required to just, you know, have a night watchman state to provide for the collective defense of the people and basic essential services that are, you know, just better done if there's a unified front and a unified response to, say, a fire, you know. But we'll see. You know, it's very just exciting to see the level of support out here, and I do see a fire kindling in people of, you know, freedom and understanding, you know, what that means and what it takes to have freedom, and, you know, participating in the political process, not running away and being an anarchist and hiding, you know, behind the illusion of chaos and the illusion of, you know, oh, we're just going to smash the system, right? It's just to cover immorality. At a certain point, you realize this is a spiritual battle, right? It's the children of the truth versus the children of the lie, as Jesse Lee Peterson likes to say. And actually, one other thing we'll go over just to close is just essentially the price. This is basically the cost breakdown. I am having a little bit of sticker shock. After all, I did buy this over the course of several months, so it didn't seem like this much. I actually thought in my mind I had spent about half this much. But, you know, that's it's exactly to the specifications that I wanted. It's, you know, a labor of love. It's my rifle that I put together. You know, I know exactly what it's made out of. You know, I know essentially, you know, how all of its bells and whistles work. But, yeah, essentially all of the components totaled up to $883. You know, $120 was upper receiver assembly and bolt carrier group, $120 for the scope, $100 for the barrel, you know, and then the ring mount for the scope was another $90, and then $87 for the lower receiver pre-engraved, and then after that it was a bunch of smaller things. There was also equipment involved. There was the AR-15 router jig conversion kit that we saw when we were milling out that final 20% of the 80% lower, and then the bench vise I didn't have before. And, you know, again, I can use all these again to make further rifles. So they're investments, they're assets. I'm glad to have them, and I see this as an investment in, you know, my home defense now and in the future. It's just a useful skill to have, a useful set of equipment. And altogether $1,067, you know, which I guess, you know, I spent more than that on crypto mining equipment, which is all now laying fallow and inoperational. So, you know, it's at least this, it doesn't matter where anything goes in the future. If times are good, hey, it's good to have it. If times are bad, it'll be probably one of the most useful things I could possibly have. So now I just gotta, you know, stock up on ammo, which I think the laws changed on that too, and now you gotta like register for ammo. So, you know, there's gonna be people just buying small amounts on very regular bases, you know, but you're gonna have to register ammunition purchases here pretty soon, I'm pretty sure. Again, California's crazy, and it's gonna keep on getting crazier until something snaps, like, you know, the state of Jefferson. And that's my video today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Cheers.
Ah.